Welcome. My name is Scroobius Pip, and this is the first ever Distraction Pieces podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in. I'm crazy excited about this. I should explain what this is. The Distraction Pieces podcast is going to be a weekly podcast every Wednesday, hosted by me, Scroobius Pip, and it's just going to be an hour to 90 minutes of conversation with different people that I think it would be interesting to have a conversation with. There's not going to be a theme. It's not just going to be hip-hop or spoken word. If you know of my background, you may have assumed that. Just going to be interesting. People I think are going to be interesting to hear a long conversation with. I think the way the internet has gone now, there's so much just bite-sized information and snippets that the art of the long-form conversation or long-form interview is dying. So podcasts are bringing that back, and I think that's fantastic. Yeah, it's going to be every Wednesday, and next week we're going to have Zane Lowe, who's amazing. We're going to have after that Alan Moore, who wrote The Watchmen and loads of other amazing things. Then legend DJ Yoda. So yeah, please subscribe on iTunes or whatever. It's going to be available on iTunes and at scroobiuspip.co.uk, and it's going to be free. But the way we're going to keep it free is we're going to have sponsors each week, and that's just going to be to cover the hosting and so on and so forth. But this week I've not got sponsors, and the reason for that is our first guest. Our first guest is Mr. Russell Brand, so it was great to have a chat with him. Again, I record these intros and outros after we've done the podcast, so it was great to have a chat with him. But after talking to him, and we talk about capitalism and socialism and communism, a lot of isms and ocracies, and it felt that it would feel appropriate to leave off the sponsorship for this first week. So you get out of me trying to peddle you stuff to pay our bills on this one. But hope you enjoy it. I'm going to pop back at the end with a little bit of information as well. So stick around there. But until then, enjoy the first ever Distraction Pieces podcast. This piece of fiction is the intro to Distraction Pieces. This piece of fiction is the intro to Distraction Pieces. This piece of fiction is the intro to Distraction Pieces. This piece of fiction is the intro to Distraction Pieces. Yeah, it's certainly, yeah, and again, it's that the whole guerrilla media, guerrilla press, guerrilla everything. I think allows that as long as it's recordable and sounds nice, then you're kind of good to go. But yeah, we don't really have a start either, so we've kind of started. Oh, if great. That's okay. Yeah. I'm here with Russell Brand. How are you?
I feel great today, mate. I'm really glad that you've come around my house to do this podcast and to have a chat together.
It's lovely to be here. I'm really grateful to get the opportunity. Yeah, thank you for welcoming me in. And we've done a trues as well. I want to discuss the trues later, but I think we should start with our shared point of history and interest of Essex. I'm from Stamford-le-Hope and you're from Grays. How was that?
I felt like, it's weird, isn't it? Like, because when I was like, now I'm actually quite proud that I'm from Grays and talk about it a lot. But when I was there, I didn't like it much. And when I first left, I was a little bit embarrassed about it.
Completely.
And a bit ashamed, actually. And
everyone from that kind of area, you're born into the belief that you should be trying to move to London or trying to get out of Grays. It's odd that's entrenched in the DNA almost of.
Yeah, it wasn't even like, because if you think about how it is, it's sort of very flat, isn't it, and low expectations and sort of bleak. But like I think a lot of, to be honest, I think a lot of the problems that I project onto Grays and were actually probably manifestations of stuff I just felt as a person. Yeah. I think maybe wherever I'd been born in, I could have been born in Bethnal Green or Kensington and still felt, I don't really fit in. And like I just used the palette of my environment to project that, like just a sense of this, I'm not good at, what I think is that I'm not good enough. So it's not really about Grays not good enough. Yeah. Like myself,
and
I guess.
I also think, though, in those kind of situations, I think something like a feeling you don't fit in or being somewhere where you feel you don't fit in often allows you to grow into the person that you've become. Do you think if you'd grown up in somewhere that was this wonderful multicultural accepting place, would you have developed in the way you developed and become the way you are? Because often performance can be initially a defense mechanism, and comedy in particular can be a defense mechanism of, I'm different, I need to make people laugh for that means. So do you think it was kind of essential to your development as as a human.
I do, Pip. I think it was like my personality more and more I see as a rejection of and a reaction to where I'm from and how I thought of myself. When I think of when I first started to be famous, put simply, that's what I mean. Like when I first got famous, it was like I had that ridiculous haircut. I was dressed in black, all swaddled up in like bondage clothes, eyeliner on, everything about me screaming, I'm exotic, I'm magic, I'm not like anybody else. And because obviously I felt like I'm boring, I'm ordinary, I'm just like everyone else. I mean, like, obviously I felt weird as a kid, and I felt like an outsider, and I felt like I required the defence of humour and the defence of being different. But I suppose I weren't like good at football. I didn't feel confident with girls. I didn't feel confident having a fight. So like I think that I had to go, oh my, like, you know, when I found things like the Smiths or like, you know, and then through the Smith, James Dean, Oscar Wilde, it's like you grab a thread of, oh, it's okay to be weird. And then when you get difference. That thing, then that becomes, oh, right, I'll make my identity around that.
And how did that feel then when you kind of became accepted at that? When you became famous and could go, right, I'm successful. Did that feel like kind of here's one in the eye to the people of Grays, or the opposite? Because I feel with, for example, being a football fan, being a West Ham fan, I've found it at Millwall that as soon as I started to be known at Millwall, I felt far more comfortable being a bearded man at football rather than a geezer being a tough guy who's comfortable in fights or whatever else. Yeah, it was that level of, so rather than it being a screw you guys, it was more kind of still seeking their approval and acceptance. So was that the same with Grays and with both West Ham? Indeed,
it is actually, Pip. It's the same. Like in a way, I almost feel like it's not like I got fame and it was an ornamentation or an addition. It felt like it was a fucking necessary supplement. It's like until I was famous, I felt finished. You know, like I felt like all the while, like when I was like. I trained to be an actor. I worked for years and years as stand-up. All that while, the sense I had was, I've got to get that thing. I need it. Like I was deficient without it. Like there was something lacking, missing. So when I go to West Ham now, I feel much more at ease, much more comfortable. And like, even though there's sometimes pain in the arse things of being famous, of like people will get on you all of the time in a photo or whatever. Yeah. I'd rather that than being ignored. I am a person it suits my nature. It suits me.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, it feels like the not needing to give the explanation. So if you're different, you're visibly different. If you're different and you're Russell Brand, they know in what way you're different. Do you know, they've got that explanation rather than looking at you and thinking you've not got a skinhead and, you know, your shirt off and a sunburn. You know, it's that kind of, oh right, I know how you're different and why you're different.
I've got a bit of where's my book? There's a bit I wrote that you might, sorry to go quiet on the mic for a moment.
No, go ahead. We can follow that back.
Like, I wrote this thing. I've not read none of this out before. So
that's great. Let's have some of it.
Yeah, let's have it. When you planning to stick this out?
This is going out on Wednesday, the 15th. So next week.
I'm sure it'll be good. I'm sure. Well, this will be a good way for that thing to get out there.
Perfect.
This is a chapter from my forthcoming book, Revolution, where I wrote about, like, I was meant to go and train with the Marines, the US Marine Corps, for a week. I got there, mate, and I know you love the cage fighting and that aspect
of a bit of MMA, yeah.
So that for me, that's about sort of a certain aspect of masculinity that I find very appealing. Like, I've got a lot of memories of men like that and boys like that from when I was a kid.
I find it's entrenched in human history. I think there was always a natural competition, and I'm against violence, just against unwitting people. But if it's two people competing in a physical form, I think I'm very much on board with that. So it's an interesting thing. But it is. It's that also there is that element of growing up at football in Essex, where the toughest kid at school is the king of the school, not the brightest kid, not the best artist, as it should be. You know, there should be the toughest kid and the brightest kid and the best artist are all revered, but that's not the case.
It's not, is it? Toughest kid, fantastic. Good at football, brilliant. Smartest kid, you can just fuck off. Good at art, but then you're gay.
Exactly, but then that's kind of how I don't know. There's a lot of theories of that's how religion came about. The fact that it became tough to control the toughest people. So religion was invented by not necessarily the weaker, but maybe the less physically dominant as a way of controlling the brutes who would just smash people over the head, because then you've got morals and ethics and codes of conduct that can control there.
I think you make an interesting point, Pip. There must have been some sort of transitional ideology or mental psychological structure that transferred from a survivalist impulse of the
where
chief.
the caveman, the toughest guy, is the leader of the clan because he can.
But also, that may have happened quite organically in that, we live in a society that's not like, the most powerful men in the world aren't the best fighters in the world.
Yeah. It's easy to look back and think it would have been clinical or thought out, but it can be an organic process as well.
We are nature, aren't we? That's one of the things, when I'm thinking, like, how do we change society? How do we reorder society? How do we have a fairer society, more representative of the values of ordinary people, as opposed to a sort of a bizarre conglomerate and elite? Because I think what we have now is a kind of brutality and tyranny that's comparable to if it were a Neanderthal horde bludgeoning everyone else into submission with fists and clubs, although it's more subversive and less obvious. I think in terms of the mentality it is the same. There must have been some transitional period where, like, I don't know if the meek inherit the earth, but the sneaky inherit the earth.
There's definitely we are in a situation where there is the most powerful, and whether that be physical in the past or simply through money or whatever, an individual can't fairly compete with them.
That's
why
I
mean. It's the same as a people, which we can discuss in greater detail as well. As a people, we can come together and compete with them, but on a one-on-one basis of equality in that, it's the same as the biggest guy in the playground.
Yeah, I agree, and that's why I think it's important that what needs to change is not individual. Well, each individual needs to change, yes, but we need to have different social structures, because if you sort of like in my book, I write a lot about, like, if you just took David Cameron out of that job and stuck me in that job, things would be more or less the same, because it's a system that's like, I'm an egotistical person, I'm a selfish person, I'm a greedy person. If you put me in a system that celebrates and elevates those values, you'll access that part of me.
I couldn't agree more. It's the current system that we have that doesn't work. People think of, for example, a dictatorship. Again, it's the fact that we have only this version of democracy. A dictatorship is seen as an evil and could never work, but that's because a lot of the records of dictatorship, or when we think of a dictatorship, we think of negative dictators who were evil. Say, for example, Barack Obama, when he was coming through, he seemed like an amazing person. If he had got in and got to be a dictator, I think he would have been able to do a lot more good than he has been able to do within the political system in America, where things like he started off, there's loads of video of him before he was even in line to be a president or even talk of it, speaking about Cuba and how the trade embargo there, we need to end it. It's ridiculous, it's archaic, it's done. Yet he becomes president, and that has to be renewed every year. It's still been renewed and continued to be renewed. So that's clearly something that if he could just do what he wanted, he would have changed that. If he had been a dictator, if a dictatorship can work if we happen to get a really good dictator, a really nice and lovely and wonderful dictator, rather than an evil, tyrannous kind of corrupt dictator.
I think I agree with you in principle, but if I like, a guiding idea that came about as a result of writing this book was that concentration of power bad, deconcentration of power good. The more you can spread power, the better it is. And when we have to talk about changing the systems and changing the structures that dominate currently, I feel that the alternative we need to have is not, let's just get better people to do the jobs people are doing now. What we need to do is go have people in charge of their own lives. I've moved closer and closer to anarchism the more I thought about it, and I never thought I'd get to that, because I always believed in the idea of great people creating great culture, but now I think everybody has got to create great culture.
Or a version of democracy that's always the closest to be taken on by the anarchist was the Athenian democracy, where they would there was variations of it over the years, obviously, but what would essentially be, if we were to adopt an Athenian democracy now, would be that everything...
Do you mean the poster shop or that place in the old days?
The place, both.
Handsome man holding a baby in black and white.
And a female tennis player scratching her bum.
A kitten in a shoe. These people are our new leaders. There's a kitten in a shoe, there's a man with a baby, and a woman scratching her arse.
The essential thing there with an Athenian democracy is that all things that are brought up to be discussed aren't judged upon by the government. They're judged upon, you elect, say, a 20 or 30 person jury of the public that is changed each time, so therefore it can't be corrupted of the public to make the vote on this. And there will be mistakes, because that's human error, but you won't have that evil person to blame. And then next time it comes round, they're gone. It will be changed, because it's different people each time.
I like that, mate. That's actual democracy, isn't it? Because we have democracy in name, but not in practice. I like that. One of the things that I think is important is people in a position of leading should have the attitude of servants. Like, we serve the people. Now, that UKIP geezer gave a bit of lip service to it. Oh, you are my bosses, you are my bosses. But he can't. That's not a promise he can deliver on, because the power structures aren't in place for people in power to be in service. For the police force to remember that they serve us, the public, rather than being the enforcers of the establishment.
Yeah. Let's go for the reading. That'd be great. Yeah, no, it'd be lovely.
Thanks, mate. Well, this was I wrote this when I went and done this day. It was meant to be a week with the Marines, right? Mm-hmm. And as I got closer to doing it in Camp Pendleton, San Diego, the closer I got, the more nervous I got about doing it, till in the end when I got there I was like, I can't do this, it's so hard. I mean, it is hardcore, the Marine Corps. Right, so I got there and I was getting edgy, and they made me, the first thing they made me do is pack a bag, right? And even the packing the bag was too hard for me, right? The bag you got.
The week isn't going to last, surely.
I can't even do the things that aren't even being a proper Marine yet. So here we go. So I'm packing this bag. I was loudly informed the reason we were packing this bag, seemingly designed to cater for a disastrous and repetitive holiday. I say that because you had to pack 3 sleeping bags. I was like, why do you need 3 sleeping bags for? Was at 3 in the morning, or 0300 hours, as Dolph called it. He looked like Dolph Lundgren. We'd be getting up to do a 10k hike carrying a 75-pound bag with 70 other trainee Marines. As well as being startled by the extraordinary distance and punishing baggage, I was concerned that one military manoeuvre contained both imperial and metric measuring systems. Make your mind up, I thought. The final futile instrument to be wheeled into the bulging knapsack was a collapsible shovel. Do all the Marines carry shovels, I asked. Dolph responded in the affirmative. Then, in the event that one is required, could I not borrow one of theirs? This inquiry, that some may have seen as an indication that they were dealing with a strategic mastermind, the likes of which we've not seen since Alexander the Great, barely warranted a grunt. Instead of being awarded a Purple Heart, I was sent off to a kind of broom cupboard to put on my fatigues. I'm at pains to point out that I was not granted the proper US Marine uniform, which I was looking forward to wearing, but instead a kind of you forgot your PE kit, so get something from the Lost Property parody of a Marine uniform. I was well vexed. I also had to tie my hair up in a bun. So gone too was my hope of undertaking this rapidly growing nightmare as a kind of latter-day Cuban revolutionary, more Frank Spencer than Che Guevara. I realised with a shudder how much of my sense of self I'd unwittingly invested in tight garments and rock and roll jewellery when I emerged from the broom cupboard in my Lost Property uniform. I was trying to distance myself from the clothes while wearing them, like a cat resists a plunge towards a full bathtub. The revulsion is magnetic. Blessedly, Pendleton is not bestrewn with mirrors, or I may not have been able to proceed. As it was, the giant pointless knapsack was thrust on my back, and I was marched to an obstacle course, the biggest obstacle being that I'd avoided PE as a kid. My indulgent mum, a single mum of an only son, would let me skip games, pandering to my teary complaints as a former fat child herself. This, I suppose, is where a father figure would have come in handy, a loving, authoritative, strong male to affectionately shove you into adversity. As it was, notes were written and physical activity strenuously avoided until I discovered that some exercise had an orgasm at the end of it. This syndrome of fatherless boys is a much-cited problem that military organisations effectively resolve. Personal identity put aside, a male ideal upon which to focus is provided and pursued. Another word for obstacle course is assault course, and I can see how both terms have flourished, because when I finally embarked on the horrific sequence of logs and fences and nets and ropes, assaulted is how I felt. They may as well have called it a humiliation course. The other Marines, that's right, other Marines, hopped, zipped and sauntered across each awful vicissitude like Butch Nijinsky's. Then came my turn. I hate doing things I'm shit at, especially in front of people who are good at them. The only way that obstacle course could have been made more traumatic is if they brought along a girl I fancied to watch. With each tentative tiptoe and stumble, I had to inwardly assure myself that I was a good comedian and that my life was not pointless. I am addicted to comfort, I thought, as I tumbled tumbled into the wood chips. I've become divorced from nature. I don't know what the names of the trees and birds are. I don't know what berries to eat or which stars will guide me home. I don't know how to sleep outside in a wood or skin a rabbit. We have become like living cutlets, sanitized into cellular ineptitude. They say that supermarkets have 3 days of food, that if there was a power cut in 3 days, the food would spoil, that if cash machines stopped working, if cars couldn't be filled with fuel, if homes were denied warmth, within 3 days we'd be roaming the streets like pampered savages, like urban zebras with nowhere to graze. The comfort has become a prison. We've allowed them to turn us into waddling pipkins. What is civilization but dependency? Now, I'm not suggesting we need to become supermen. That solution has been averred before and didn't end well. Prisoners of comfort, we dread the apocalypse. What will we do without our pre-packed meals and cosy jails and soporific glowing screens rocking us comatose? The apocalypse may not arrive in a bright white instant. It may creep into the present like a fog. All about us we may see the shipwrecked harbingers foraging in the midst of our excess. What have we become that we can tolerate adjacent destitution, that we can amble by ragged despair at every corner? We've allowed them to sever us from God, and until we take our brothers by the hand, we will find no peace.
That's great. I love it. So what you found, because as you were starting, I was going to ask if you learned anything from that experience, because it generally felt unpleasant and unenjoyable. But it seems you learned how much we've come to depend on all these things, and how much you was that kind of the primary thought there. Then that highlighted what our society allows us to become and turns us into. Like,
well, going to the Marines, I mean, I don't think I had a rational explanation, Pip, when I went there, other than like a sense of intrigue. And I think it might be the same as like what you're saying with the cage fighting. It's almost like the intellect, the language arrives second, the ideas arrive second. I just got a yearning. And I'm fascinated by the Marines. I'm fascinated by prison. I'm fascinated by all these things.
Yes, certainly.
And I don't know why it is until I experience them. And then I'm through experiencing it, even in the limited form that I did there, because I wasn't hard enough to take too much more of it, you start to go, fuck, this is what this is we've become detached from reality. And if you're in the army, I don't in one sense you're detached in that you're birded off into the military, you've got to wear these clothes, you've got to do these things. At least you sort of know, no, if someone fucking drops me off in a forest in the middle of the night, I'm not going to die.
It's interesting, because that's it's two unhighlighted versions of detachment, I guess. The fact that I'm obviously not a fan of the military in a lot of ways, and part of that is the detachment from what they actually do and the impact, the fact that you just follow orders, and therefore there's a detachment from whether these orders are good or bad. But then equally, we have a detachment from the physical realities that they experience, I guess.
We are detached. And like that's why I like that bloke Buckminster Fuller. Buckminster Fuller wrote a book called Operating Instructions for Spaceship Earth, right? And he just he said that what you've always got to return to in your head, because we get so distracted, is we're on this planet in space, we've got these resources, we've got this many people. Obviously we need systems to get the resources to the people while respecting the planet. Any system that's is out of whack with that, you've got to fuck it off. So like the way that the energy industry runs, that's totally out of sync with the system. And the only reason it isn't changes is because there's the economic incentives for it to stay the same are too powerful. It's a broken system. It's destroying the planet. It's creating inequality. And yet no one will change it because there's no purchase on that power. Whether you're voting for UKIP or Labour in Clacton, you ain't getting to vote for can I not destroy the planet? Especially and it's especially frustrating, I think, because there are alternative energy sources. You know what I mean? So that's what it's like. We're not having a real conversation.
Yeah, completely.
We are detached. We are, in a way, we're not living in a zoo. We're living in a farm. Our consciousness is farmed. We live in our little bullet houses. We live our little bullet lives. We don't interact properly with the real world. And that's what the bit that got me is that, it came, when people say stuff like, remember when there was that fuel strike a little while ago? There's that sense of, whoa, this could go mad because the supermarket. And that's only around the corner. That it don't take much.
Completely. I find it fascinating. As you were saying there, that we live in this. The problem with our democracy is it's a democracy with a no exit, and not to keep going back to dictatorships. I'm not suggesting we do that.
You and I talk about it a lot.
The fact is, a dictatorship has an exit. It's a brutal and bloody one often because it's an overthrowing. But the democracy we currently have, there's not a tick box of saying I want something other than our current system or our current democracy. So how do we address that? Is it through activism, through uprising, and through
I think initially
forcing that change?
I do believe that, Pip. I think through activism, disobedience, and forcing it. Like, see, like if me and you on our own say we're not paying our mortgage, we're not paying our credit card bills, we're not voting, we're not paying any tax, we go to prison. If me, you, and 20,000 other people do that. That's a movement, because people recognise, hold on a minute, when the financial industry collapses, they get bailed out. There's money available for that. When there's an Ebola crisis in Africa, there's no money available for that. So, is money available or is money not available? Yeah. So one of the ideas in my book come from this anthropologist anarchist that you should meet called David Graeber. Mm-hmm. He believes in debt cancellation for ordinary people, cancellation of your mortgage, cancellation of your credit cards. And you go, what? That can't happen. But it can. It has happened. They already cancelled a load of debt for the financial. There's a thing called quantitative easing. They're pumping trillions and trillions still into the economy. A thing called quantitative easing to make sure that the financial markets stays afloat. So, there's an argument that Graeber makes that instead of doing that to sustain this unworkable economic system, bail out ordinary people. Debt was never meant to be was something that was sustained. People weren't meant to be born into debt, live their lives in debt. That's a form of slavery. Every completely. Religion in the world talks about usury and debt jubilees and debt cancellation, but these kind of ideas don't make it into the public sphere because they're outside of the current power structures. Yeah. The first thing we have to believe for things to stay the same is there's no alternative. That's what you hear all the time. Winston Churchill, this is the best possible system of all the alternatives. It's like a famous idea that this is all we can do. Yeah. It's simply not true. It's simply not true.
It always infuriates me when the talk of democracy or the current democracy is, it's, as you said there, it's our best option. It's not. It's currently our only option.
Yes.
It's what we have.
Yes.
So, that doesn't mean it's our best option. That's the only option you're offering us. So, therefore, the other options are forced change and forced, have to be taken upon ourselves.
I've spent a bit of time around politicians lately, a Lord, a few MPs and that, and asked them about how it works systemically. It's so boring, laborious and slow. And I realise what it is the way that system works is they will give us as little as they can without us bursting in and kicking the doors in and torching the place. That's as much they'll give you. They'll keep it right at that point. Once in a while, they'll make a mistake. Poll tax riots, once in a while, there'll be something they don't anticipate. But they'll give us the bare minimum. They've got no interest in distributing wealth, distributing resources. They want things to stay the same because things work for them. And what completely. I realise, and the thing that I've started to say is, people that say the system works mean the system works for me. Yeah. So any journalist that says things are okay, any politician that says things are okay, they are okay for them.
Yeah. So surely to get a real change, though, surely it will take a lot of selflessness. It will take a lot of, because I think a true change and revolution would be started now, but would not be completed until after our lifetimes. So, kind of, how do you feel on that? On that, it's about making change that you might not see immediately, but if you're making the change because it's what you morally believe in, rather than making the change because you want a personal victory. Well, is that the
how
the
I would answer
option?
that, mate, is that we don't know. I'm not in the results business. From my spiritual life means I can't be in the results business. I'm in the action business. Yeah. I leave the results to a higher thing. Yeah, sure. Now, what I think is, I don't get satisfaction from pursuing self-satisfaction. I fall for the same trick every morning. I think my job is to make Russell happy. Yeah. Oh, Russell wants girls. Russell wants money. Russell wants fame, attention, power. And then I go, that sounds like a good idea. That's a message that's being endorsed and wrung out throughout our culture. I'll go for that. It's getting confirmed. Sure. And then at the end of the day, I feel like, oh, God, I feel all empty and miserable and alone. Some days I turn first thing in the morning to a higher thing and put into to simple language, God. And I go, right, help me to be useful. Help me to be useful. Help me to be of service and to be loving. And when I do that, I'm tuned in to helping other people and I feel better. Now, this idea of revolution, it does have to be immediate. And to encourage you, mate, what I would say is a thing I heard, that the agricultural revolution took thousands of years. The industrial revolution took hundreds of years. The technological revolution took tens of years. The spiritual revolution could be instantaneous. Now look at, like, say, Nike, Coca-Cola, massive organisations, right? Massive, powerful organisations. But what are they dependent on? They're dependent on us. If I make a choice, I ain't buy, like, not necessarily Nike. I don't know if Nike are that bad. It's just I plucked it out of the air, you know. Like, you know, Nike. Like, if I just go, I ain't buying Nike stuff no more.
Yeah.
Nike's dead to me. Now, if everyone makes an individual choice, Nike's dead to me. That's it. They're done. Completely. They're gone. It's over. And, you know, I think that these kind of realisations will begin to permeate. I think these kind of, like, as we realise, hang on a sec, this stuff's really not working for us.
It's voting with your wallet. I mean, you highlighted before, or when we were doing the truths, in fact, that the most of the political parties are run by big bankers and people with millions of pounds. So a vote with your wallet is as relevant as a vote in an election, surely. So I mentioned actually before, there's a website called nomore.org that will break down the political parties linked to every big corporation and company. So you could look up Nike and go, right, if I buy Nikes, who are they are then funding and who am I therefore supporting? So yeah, there's that thing of because of the internet and the way we can just have this information. If we as a collective said, here's the people that support the party I don't like, I'm going to stop buying their stuff, then that would be a way of change.
You're quite right. You're quite right. I mean, that we participate in this discourse constantly, and that not spending money, but and disobeying is what I think is like. That's what the reason I said that no voting thing is just because it's like. Don't like, and I was surprised by the amount of agitation it caused. But I think the reason it did is because once you start going, "What's the point? It's bullshit." Like then it's like, "No, it isn't. This is not bullshit. This is democracy. People died for democracy." Well, what's the difference? What difference does it make? Who's gonna? Like, no one wants the NHS to be dismantled. NHS is being dismantled. I bet no one, like where we're from, wants the Thameside Library to be closed, which you told me is happening.
That they're trying to close down.
Who can we vote for then? Who's the person that's going to go, "Hello, vote for me"? I'll just go, "No way, we ain't shutting it. We're going to levy more taxes from all the corporations that operate out of Lakeside, the nearby shopping centre. They'll pay for your library."
Completely.
No one's going to say that.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I think the problem, the reason you will have got that backlash from the no voting thing is because of the short form nature of all interviews and sound bites now. So no voting will be part of the solution. I'm sure you weren't thinking at the time that that's the big solution. We stop voting and everything's fixed. It's part of the solution, so it's part of a greater solution. As you've said there, through being active, through going out and whether it be protesting or whether it be not supporting certain companies or buying certain things, it can all then work together to make a change, right?
Yes, mate. I mean, I believe, like, the reason I said, like, don't vote is because I believe in democracy, and we don't have democracy. Democracy is where if I feel I don't want the NHS shut, I don't want that library shut, I don't want immigrants vilified, I don't want people with illnesses vilified, I don't want people's disability who do I vote for? There's no one saying completely. That they're going to... Who's the person that goes, right, what we've done is we've noticed that look, we don't tax wealth, so wealth needs to be taxed. We've noticed that there's that companies that operate out of our country are registered offshore. We're not having that no more. We're not signing any more trade agreements that increase corporate power. And all of the money that we get from that, plus the money we get from not spending on weapons and unnecessary wars, we're going to spend on feeding and clothing and educating the poor people of this country and giving them power back. You know, like, the structures can't do it. So that's why I think break down power, devolution, like you know, the reason I think Scottish people were excited by that referendum is because it felt like some real change was being offered. And I think, why not an independent Scotland, an independent Manchester, an independent Essex, an independent London, an independent, break everything down so people participate in a society of referenda, a society of direct democracy, of being directly empowered to control your own system. You don't want to, if you know, like, you know, but that does mean you have to pay the price, because like some people will vote as they do in Switzerland, where they have a lot of this direct democracy. We don't know more mosques built, and it's like, oh shit. So, you know, there's got to be responsible media and a well-informed populace. But I think like direct democracy and representative democracy is a sensible way to go.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's interesting. There was a thing that my brother put on his Facebook account and got fury from all his friends. Was there's the traditional saying of if you don't vote, you've not got a right to complain, which I'm sure you would have had chucked at you numerous times when you spoke on not voting. And his post was, if you vote, you've not got a right to complain, because it's the complete opposite. Because you're engaging in the system. If you don't believe in their system yet you're engaging in it, then how can you complain? Because if you've not voted because you don't believe in democracy, then you can say, no, I didn't vote, but because it's shit and I'm fucking furious about it. Whereas if you're saying I believe in it and it didn't go my way, then how can you complain? So engaging in it and believing in it, but only to the extent it goes your way. And even with people like UKIP, I think it's horrible. But if you want democracy, and it happens that the people in Thurrock have a percentage of people who believe they're racist bullshit, then they've got a right to have a seat.
That's right. And then
so you can't complain then. You can't say it's disgusting. So if you're engaging in democracy, then...
That's right. I mean, I think then what what that highlights is sort of the people. What I noticed when I looked at that experiment in Switzerland for direct democracy is people still voted the way that a big right of centre party would have had them vote. So it's what shows you that if people, what kind of free, this is not a new idea, it's Chomsky's idea, the manufacture of consent. If people's head is full with the idea, immigrants are causing your problem, now vote. Should we get rid of immigrants? Yes! But if you're given the information, it's bankers that are in your problem, that are creating the problems in your society, then people will vote in that direction.
Again, and it's hugely ignorant to think that you can bring in this new system and it will work instantly, because the people that are voting in this new system have been brought up on the previous system and have been brainwashed in these certain ways. So you can't write off a thing like that. Like, people would argue it doesn't work because they've voted this way. Well, we've tried democracy for hundreds of years, so you'd need to try anything new for hundreds of years before you can say if that worked or didn't work.
Yes, you're quite right. And of course, we're not competing with perfection. It's not like, hey, don't fuck with our system, we've worked it all out. The planet's like 50 to 100 years away from total meltdown. There's massive inequality, so it's like we're competing with something that's fucked anyway. All we've got to be is better than fucked. And what I genuinely believe is, for ordinary people, life will improve under a different system where there's more direct democracy and greater control of corporate power. There's no doubt about that.
Completely.
And the people that run the media are the corporate power. The people that work in government are the corporate power. So there's no way of getting any purchase on that argument until people come together.
I think the current democracy, it's my main issue with it is it's an illusion of having any input. It's that I think democracy is what's stopping a revolution. Because if you can say I voted, then I don't know, it lets you off doing anything about it.
It's like a valve,
you've cast your vote, so it didn't go the way I wanted, but I voted, so I can ignore it now and get on with my life, rather than there's no voting. Look at all this horrible shit's going on. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
Because most people, what they're going to do is vote in the next election. Say that isn't an option. What are you going to do about it then? Are you going to ignore it? Or are you going to actually do something and ignite this change?
Yeah, I think people don't believe that real change is possible, Pip. And I think the first thing we've got to do is make the idea that real change is possible accessible, and to empower people that your life don't have to be run by some bloke who went to Eton and Oxford. You're not an idiot. You can run your own life. You do run your own life, and you can run your own family, your own communities. We've got these tools and facilities available. I'm sure there'll be changes, but I think it's generally possible that we could have a society where people have more leisure time, better food, more time with their families, more community-based activity, and more love. Things might move a bit slower. You might not get as many iPads and iPods and iDis and iWants, but generally speaking, things will get better. You're still going to have entertainment. You can still dress cool. You can still watch football.
I mean, that's an interesting thing, and an interesting point that I think a lot of people don't realise is people more often than not who campaign or casually campaign for equality, so on Facebook campaign for equality rather than actually getting out there and doing something, want equality with those above them but don't necessarily want equality with those below them. So I think if you want equality, which I think is right, and I think you're right that it's accepting that equality for a lot of people could mean a step down. You know, in the middle class, if equality essentially is going for the kind of communism that Cuba had or Russia pre-corruption, before it got corrupted and was horrible. So if you want that, then the situation there of that equality would be, for example, if you want to learn the piano, then you need to book time on the community piano. You can't just go out and buy a piano, because that's not equality. If we've got equality and everyone's equal, I can't go out and buy tons of DVDs if people can't afford that.
What I reckon though, Pip, is that we ain't living in 1917, we're living in 2014, and a lot of people, there are enough pianos, there are enough cars, there's enough access to movies and technology. There's enough for everyone to have everything. Now I reckon for the vast majority of people, things would improve. And I even think, like, I've got a few quid and I'm prepared to give up whatever it takes. Whatever it takes, I'm prepared to give up. Like, you know, and I hope to God I'm tested on that. But I also think, mate, I don't think this is about like normal folk with a business that are putting food in their kids' mouths. Like, I think this is about great big organisations, great big corporations. Let's start with them. And also, it's not like, that's why I don't agree with a dictator model, because some people might go, I want to keep my piano, and I think that's sort of right. Okay, then organise your community in a way that people are cool with that. You know, because like it's not for us to say, because I know a lot of people that love their motor, right?
Yeah.
I love my clobber, and I don't think I think we've got to let people we've got to create structures that allow people to run things at their own pace. I don't think we've got to scare people with, like, if you're a middle class person, we're fucking coming for your shed.
So in that respect, it would very much be, as you said, devolving and doing it on small personal scales. So it's all kind of because that's, again, I feel that would be almost impossible to do on a global scale. But if it was broken down, it could be done globally in pockets. Almost
like we've got to design a template for and start doing it. Like, right, we're doing it here in, say, I don't know, Billericay or London or whatever. We're doing it and it's working for us. Why don't you set up your own model? You know, like, it would be nice if there were some guiding principles. Like, I think like a lot of them 12-step abstinent-based fellowships, mate, have like in their 12, there's the 12 steps by which people can get clean, but then there's the 12 traditions by which these organisations are run. And there's some really interesting rules that can't ever be fucked with no matter what. And those things are interesting. One is each group is fully autonomous and fully self-supporting, except in matters affecting other groups or the organisation as a whole. So as long as you're doing stuff that doesn't affect anyone else and you're funding it, you do what you want to do. And you're not, so like in the case of a sort of a civil society, not messing with the planet, not messing with basic fundamental human rights. Yeah, do what you got to do. You're cool to do that. But don't mess with us if we want to have some crazy, wild, drug-taking colony over here. Yeah. You know. And another thing is, our leaders are trusted servants. They do not govern. And like you said, that thing of like juries of 20, 30 people, right, for a month it's this mob, right, clear off. You know, people don't think that we have...
Because that's it. I mean, again, to fit even... Or the Athenian democracy would fit even more to your model, because their actual a reality initially was everyone has a say on it.
Wow.
But, I mean, it was because everyone, sadly, something like 60-70% of that time was slaves, and slaves didn't get a say in that, and women didn't get a say, and children didn't get a say. So everyone was more manageable. But again, if it was on a smaller
everyone
scale,
doesn't include everyone.
Yeah, exactly. But if it was on a smaller scale, then say everyone in Billericay, as you mentioned, everyone has a vote on all of these, or everyone who chooses to. You don't have to. Everyone who chooses to go and have a say in this has a say. And then it's ruled, and then that's the law. That's what's allowed. We have now made it official that every Thursday it's wild drug-taking sex parties all around Billericay. That's brought in, but that's because
they have already got that. I think
it's Tuesdays at the moment. I'm campaigning hard for a move.
Can we move to later in the week? I've got a lot on. I've got an ice cream van.
But yeah, so that kind of structure. As pie in the sky as it might have seemed, on a smaller scale and on an individual scale. So do you think that's the bit? Do you think local politics is essentially the key? Because I think, again, we get blinded in elections of we're voting for Cameron. Yeah. You're not most of the time. You're voting for a guy in your, the actual change is your local area rather than, and it's, again, I get confused in that. I think it's easy to get confused on who you're voting for and what it all is.
But we've all got, that's what we've got to return to, that like Buckminster Fuller rational model. What are we human beings? We're meant we're designed to live in little societies of 100, 150 people. That's how we're designed to live. More than that, it's confusing for us. Now we live in a technological age. There's all sorts of ways of organising differently, more democratically, more power. But when it comes to our resources, nature is trying to tell us, eat the food that grows near you at the time that it grows. Yeah. Don't try and have all year round strawberries flowing shit back and forth around the world. Don't have America export and import the exact same tonnage of beef each year, flying things around. Don't grow apples in Kent, fly them to South Africa to be waxed and polished, then fly them back to Kent to be sold. That's not a sensible idea. No. So when they talk to us like they're the grown-ups, but you ain't the grown-ups. You've got mad systems with the only idea in mind, much money, much money, much money. We got much better ideas. We got much better ideas. I think where possible, take the power. See, like another one of the ideas in my book, mate, that I got from that magazine Adbusters, you know, it's a Canadian magazine. They're campaigning to kill corporations like GM Motors, Monsanto, Philip Morris, you know, General Electric, whatever, like big corporations that are either like not paying their taxes or in the cases of GM Motors or Philip Morris, killing their customers, revoke their charters. Because it's never happened before, people think it can't be done. But you could just go to Philip Morris, we're shutting you down. We're taking your resources, your shares are all null and void, we're using them factories for something else, maybe, you know, marijuana factories, or I'm packing up marijuana cigarettes for the people of Colorado, wherever that stuff's legal. It's over. Or GM Motors, we're taking it back. You know, people go, you can't do that, I own the shares, it's mine. But that's just the system, that's just an idea. They've had a good run, and their idea, their version of events is destroying the planet. It's not working. And Monsanto, what's going on, I'm sure you're aware of copyrighting seeds and destroying agriculture the world over, is an idea that isn't working. Like the only reason that we, they're taking advantage of us, they're transgressing our laws, our rights, destroying our planet, and yet it's like, you know, their economic and financial systems are regarded as a religion, the economy regarded as a god, things that can't be encroached upon or confronted. But actually, there are higher codes. We're all connected. We're on this planet that we're in a symbiotic relationship with, not a relationship of dominance. And if we don't learn to respect it and regard it, it's going to cough us off it.
No, that makes a lot of sense. The only thing that that instantly flagged up there was who is we? Who is deciding that we can take this back and take this power? Surely, again, we need to find our own way of government. There's an amazing quote, and I think it's been evident in the Arab Springs uprisings where they've done amazing things. They had this whole turnaround of so many people protesting and overthrowing governments, but the problem being they weren't necessarily prepared with what to do after that. There's a quote from the film The Battle of Algiers. I don't know if you've seen it, but it was filmed just after the Battle of Algiers actually happened, with a lot of the people who were in it, and it's about all revolution. It's actually absolutely amazing. But the quote that always stuck with me was, it's hard to start a revolution, harder still to win a revolution. Hard to start a revolution, harder still to sustain a revolution, hardest of all to win a revolution. But only once we've won do the real difficulties begin. So do we need to start preparing now potentially for what we would do after a revolution? Obviously I think a lot of people are becoming more open to the revolution thing. I think obviously you've got a book that's highlighting a lot of these different options and possibilities. So opening everyone's mind, awareness is a starting point, but awareness isn't the end goal. Sure, like actually living it, acting it, being the revolution is more important than just the awareness of the possibility.
I think we have to create the space for spontaneous cooperation and have some guiding principles. We have to have guiding principles that cannot be transgressed. One of them is no galling inequality. Another is no damage ecologically, and another is we take care of one another. Now, like within that, we have to work out what is the malleability for centralised government and centralised ideologies. Do you need a centralised health service? Is it possible to have some hierarchical structures? Is it possible to have some inequality of wealth? Some people might be well into keeping their detached drums, that's a negotiation. But the important thing, but there are loads of ideas and loads of variation and loads of options within that world, right? And what I think the first thing we have to do, Pip, the first obligation we have is what's happening now is unacceptable. This idea has to go, because this isn't serving anybody except for a few people to the detriment of the planet. What we've created actually is a system like what happens if you look at the ugliest aspects of yourself, your selfishness, your greed, your lust, your weakness, and then build society around that. I mean, because I've got them things in me. I am capable and very selfish, very greedy, very lustful, right? And all of us are. So what I want is to live in a culture that encourages and stimulates and engages the part of me that's altruistic, philanthropic, kind, friendly. I don't want the part of me that's jealous and insecure, constantly pressed, like you're not good enough, you're not hard enough, you're not sexy enough, you've not got enough money, you should have this car, you're not as good as these people, you don't deserve it. If you're bombarded by it, so first we've got to get rid of all that messaging, and we've got to get rid of... Capitalism is greed made into an economic structure. It comes from a thing. I read this wicked thing the other day, mate, by some sort of Hindu, I can't remember who he was, but he had a meeting with Bertrand Russell, who was a prevalent, as well as a great genius and philosopher, was a prevalent campaigner for the early campaign for nuclear disarmament. This yogi fella goes to him, if we do get rid of nuclear weapons, which is obviously one of the biggest threats facing humankind and the planet, this yogi fella goes, isn't it still a bit of a problem that we have the brains that came up with them? That nuclear weapons are a manifestation of something in us. And if we don't address that thing in us, we're going to just keep creating shit like that one way or another. And Bertrand Russell goes, look, just don't bother me with none of that crap. Let's get rid of nuclear weapons, right? Now, we've still got nuclear weapons to this day. So in a way, what I think this geezer was saying is correct. We've got to stimulate other aspects of the self. The revolution has to be spiritual. It has to engage with people on that level of, like, you know human beings. You are a human being. You walk around, you talk to human beings. Everyone, when you calm them down and look in their eyes, they'll tell you the most important thing is love, the people they care about. And that all of the things, all of the tokens that we grasp for, when you break them down, they're love. I go to West Ham. Why? Because I want to feel like I belong to those people, that I'm together, that we're unified. You love the cage fighting and Millwall. Why? Because you're a hooligan.
I get that. I think that's true. I think that's fascinating, the fact that getting rid of nuclear weapons isn't as simple as the fact that, you know, it's something that we've come up with and something that exists and came from inside of us. So we need to, I guess, address the internal at the same time as the external, right? Yes, at the same
time, I agree.
So rather than instead of, do you feel at all, and again, if anything I say is against any of your beliefs, obviously I understand it's not to attack anything, it's obviously to have open discussion here. Do you feel that that financial equality is an overpowering distraction from equality overall? Because I think we're in the UK, or the discussions I see of the UK, equality is always around finance rather than all the different levels of equality there are. And I know finance contributes to it, but for example, if I had the option of taking all of Rupert Murdoch's money away, or the option of taking away his power over the media, I think the greater good would be done instantly by taking away his power over the media. So the power equality or even the equality in decisions, as we've been saying throughout the whole interview, in democracy and in Parliament. So even if we didn't have the financial inequality, or if we didn't have a financial equality, surely a great step would still be to have equality in power and in the democracy. Mate, in the saying of what's going on.
I don't mind Rupert Murdoch being rich if he wants to be rich, but what I do mind, after they hacked into the answer machine of a dead child, is that they can continue running that business,
still act in that manner.
Well, you know, and if you want a Sun newspaper, you know, and like, you know, and if you're in Liverpool, you don't want one, and they don't have one there, it just doesn't. No one has it. But like, if it's going to exist, people work at the Sun. They used to have a proud print union, which I'm sure you've got people in your past that work there. I know, like I have, because it's people from around here work there. Yeah. So like, have the people that print the newspapers, deliver the newspapers, write the newspapers, run that newspaper democratically, the way that, you know, the capitalist financial model is not the only model. The people like, you know, say like, you know, Pret-a-Manger, I think it might be ultimately owned by McDonald's, it might not be anymore, I don't know the score on that particular thing. But like, I love a sandwich, have a sandwich then, you know, but like, the people that work in Pret-a-Manger, the people that make the sandwiches, the people that deliver the sandwiches, let them organise their businesses themselves and let them share their profits among themselves. And I don't agree with like people getting like mental wealth. It's kind of like, I don't think that's healthy or productive. I think that stuff should go back into society, but like, I don't know that that's something you can impose on people. That's where I like this model of localization. But definitely. Like the idea that, you know, that we'd have to live in some bleak grey communist hell if we don't have capitalism is I don't agree with it. I think it's inaccurate. There's a really good, another good bit in my book, right? There's a couple of bits I nicked, right, in my book. Well, not so much nicked. I put a great big essay from Noam Chomsky, and then I broke it down and analysed it. It goes, it's a total blag that they're looking out for our safety. They tell us all the time, well, the reason we're spying on you, reading your emails, is for your safety. We want to protect you from terrorism. And Noam Chomsky goes, well, let's take a look at that. They're saying to us they care about our safety. So if our government cares about our safety, the things that are going to be most important to them are the things that are the biggest threat to our safety. And he goes, well, I've had a look. It's climate change and nuclear weapons. It isn't emails, right? So he goes, those subjects, they don't give a fuck. They want more and more nuclear weapons. They want more and more climate change. So they're lying. Well, what are they doing then? Why are they looking at our emails? Because their enemy isn't ISIS. Their enemy is us. We're the enemy that they want to control. Ordinary people that live in their countries. They want to make sure no one's getting any good ideas and people aren't communicating with one another, and that the dominant idea of capitalism can always prevail. Another good thing I nicked at, it was a George Orwell thing from Homage to Catalonia. He talks about a brief period before the Spanish Civil War, just before it, where anarchists took over Catalonia. He said it was amazing. He said people were organising their own shops. No one was calling each other sir anymore. Everyone was like, all right, mate, how's it going? And people were dressed normal and casual and running their own businesses. And he goes, but most of all, there's a sense of pride that people are participating in their own culture, in their own society. And that's an option that's open to us. We've sort of forgotten because we grew up in Thurrock and we see the options, we see the narrow horizons, we tune into Grange Hill, we tune into Newsround, we watch this, our minds are that big. Take it beyond that, mate. The senses, we're witnessing the world through the 5 limited senses. Someone told me once that, the 5 senses through that humanity experiences reality through is like dipping your finger in a glass of water. You can feel the edges of the glass, you can feel it in the water. But beyond the senses is like dipping your finger into the ocean. There are limitless realms of unknowable information, but that nonetheless informs us. We know that we are connected. We know that the most important things are love. We know that we get stymied and blindsided by the economic arguments, but really what we need to address is that sense of alienation, the sense that most of us live in a culture where we don't feel like we're connected, where the simple pleasures of us helping one another just in a simple way is we're losing the language for it. Round here there's a plaque for a woman, I think she's called Mary Hughes, like most of them blue plaques, mate, it says something like composer or expert of this or world's best boxer or footballer or whatever. Well, this one, it just says Mary Hughes, a friend to all in need. And I don't even really know what it is she'd done. But she was just, if you need a friend, she's like, I'll help. I just think, who among us isn't capable of that? Yeah,
completely. It's weird how we've allowed the great leaps in technology that should have brought us closer together to allow us to be more distant and to give us the means to go days and weeks without real interaction with anyone. We've got everything at our fingertips to be a more caring, a more friendly, a more engaging society, yet somehow we feel more distant now.
More distant than that, more isolated, but I think it's because behind it, the governing ideology is the same one that creates nuclear weapons. It's a culture that wants us individualistic, materialistic, and atomised. We don't believe it. As soon as you say there is no God, all that there is that which we can see, then all there is you. You're on your own. You can see where your fingers end. You can see where your face ends. But there's more to it than that. We are pulsating, sweating, vibrant, hot, living, interconnected creatures. And if we only live by the information that's most obviously readable, then we're cutting ourselves off. The other trick of technology is, where's all the extra time our washing machines were meant to get us? Why are we not just working a couple of hours a day and then spend the rest of the time playing football or having a cuddle in the park? So it doesn't suit them for us to be thinking, to be hanging out. It suits them for us to be chained to a desk or chained to a phone, or just as long as we're chained to something. The technology isn't serving us. All of these facilities, all of these organs are present, and now we need to organise.
Yeah, completely. Well, we'll start to wrap up shortly, but I feel discussions like this are greatly lacking and missing from where we form our beliefs. And would you kind of agree that there's a lot of political beliefs and social beliefs that I don't agree with, but I'm kind of okay with if that person has come to them from an educated point of view, that they've educated themselves on the subject, they have their strong beliefs, rather than where we're from, a lot of people who will vote UKIP or be on board with UKIP don't really know what UKIP are, who UKIP are, who's behind them, what their primary functions are, because it's easy to read a headline or watch a 2-minute a little advert saying here's basically what we do and just accept that rather than delve further. So do you feel that even like you said, you've met a lot of politicians recently? I have a natural revulsion of politicians and generally the rich, and it's a fault of my own, but I feel if you're a politician and you've studied that and researched that and you believe in that system, I have less hate for that than someone who is just blindly following. So do you feel that's the key from our side, from the left side, regardless of slight differences in beliefs, in solutions or whatever? Do you think the key is for all of us to become greater educated in that, which I think it's easy not to these days?
You're right.
With social media, it's easier to just say, I ticked on this campaign or I shared this link, therefore I support that, rather than actually go deeper into it and understand it.
I do agree with you. I agree with you. We shouldn't allow our beliefs to be prescribed to us. We should question, we should be open to new information, and we should be respectful, because in a way, mate, if enough people are educated, these arguments will take care of themselves just by sheer force of numbers. Yeah. Once enough people know that they are voting for ideas that fuck their lives up, they'll stop doing it. Yeah. Once people know that they can have a different society, a fairer society, if they're prepared to participate in it in a meaningful way, they will do it. We lack nutrition. We lack the nutrition of knowledge, and we lack proper nutrition of food. We're getting fed shit food and shit information. Yeah. And neither of those things are necessary. It's good that you're doing this, that you're doing a podcast like this, and I hope it'll be successful. And I hope that not only do people listen to this, but they do their own podcasts and they pursue their own media. I mean, like, for
completely.
me,
I think that's key. I think the mistake in many things like podcasts is the illusion that we're in competition. There's podcasts like there's the Joe Rogan podcast, which goes on and off on amazing political discussions, all sorts of other things. There's the Nerdist and numerous others that I think are amazing. I think the more we have of that, rather than, again, being born into that capitalist way of their competition, therefore I need to outdo them, the more the fucking merrier.
I'm bad with that. I'm competitive. Do you know what I mean? It occurs to me all the time, but I'm trying to get beyond it. It's like, and that's what I think is important as well, Pip, is for us to say, we're in there too. Humanity, being a human is a Me Too business. We're all down in the swamp. We're all trying our best, trying to elevate the best aspect of me, the best aspect of you, the best aspect of each other. And all of us at some point will slip up. I'll do something selfish one day. I'll do something lustful and be, oh, don't worry, Russ, you slipped up there. Come on, back on board, mate. Yeah. Not like, no, fuck you, I'm great. I just get carried away. I can talk fast and remember good words. So I start thinking, oh my God, I'm brilliant. Yeah. And then in the end of it, I think, oh, I want my dick sucked. Yeah. And it's like, and then I wake up and I'm like, oh, that was worthless to me. We mustn't lose the connection. There is nothing to be gained outside of the connection. When I lose my connection to what's valuable, to what's worthwhile, I end up hurting myself, I end up hurting other people. But I have to allow myself to not be perfect today. I have to know that I'm a person that's got an ego, that's got needs that I'm still tackling and dealing with. But look at us, we're in a different space. We were people that were designed to work in call centres or Fords or whatever, and here we are just doing what we want and doing all right out of it, and other people can as well. And it's just, but hopefully that won't just lead to...
that that's an option, right? It's realising that's an option. And again, I think that you've said something hugely important there, that fallibility is key. It's not, you can make mistakes. You can. It doesn't mean you shouldn't stand up and have a say and try and make change just because you're not perfect. You're going to have errors and slip-ups, and as long as we can all pull together, that makes all the difference, right?
Yes.
Can we just quickly, before we wrap, I just want to talk about the truths briefly, and just let me know about that. I think it's hugely important. I think in America there's Young Turks came up as a news organisation that wasn't owned by corporations and trying to report. So what's kind of your reason behind the truths, and why? I think it's amazing you have the commitment of doing 5 a week and doing this and pushing this out there when it's not on the BBC or whatever. So what's your thought there, and what's your end goal with the Trues?
I want to grow the Trues. I want to do my own show on it, like as often as I can, and I would like other people to do it. If you wanted to do a channel using the Trues, like it's like we're a conglomerate, we're a community of people, and I want to encourage other people to do it as well. I'm just working on how to build that infrastructure for people to send in their own stuff, because there's loads of important local campaigns going on, like the people like they're campaigning to not get to lose their homes in Hoxton on the New Era estate. These incredible brave women that are organising to confront Edward Benyon and Richard Benyon MP and the Westbrook private investment firm that are trying to take over their estate and make them homeless. And there's the Fire Brigade Union, there's all these campaigns going. I think provide a media outlet for them, because they won't get no traction in the corporate media. And there's all sorts of I think we need to know how to grow our own food. We need to know how to look after ourselves and one another. I'd like a channel on these are the different types of martial arts, everything true news of this is what it is to be alive now, because the BBC won't give it to you. No one will give it to you. BBC does loads of amazing programming and all that kind of stuff, but as a news agency, they're in bed with the government. They've got a job to do, so it is something I want to grow. It's something I want to continue to do myself, and then I want to check myself at every level, because when my ego steps in and yes, oh my God, this is powerful now, and I've got to remember, no, it's not. Give everything away. Give it all away. People run it themselves. I have to remind myself every day, the objective is not make money, get your dick sucked. If that's been pummeled into you so hard, that message, through all sorts of different ways, whether it's Frank McAvenny or your own dad, you're picking up all sorts of messages of what it is to be cool, and it takes a long while to let go of that.
Yeah, completely. Well, that's fantastic, and it's one of the most exciting things to look forward to, watching what the Trues grows into and everything that's achieved with that. So thank you very much for coming on and chatting, and let's go and make money and get our dick sucked.
Let's make money and get our dick sucked and see if we can save Thameside Library in Grays while doing it.
Well, I think we are, as this ends, we're going to have a discussion on that now, because as you said, there's it's amazing. There's causes that are personal to individuals, and that's what doesn't come across on the news, because the news has to be the most affect everyone, rather than these individual causes that should be relevant to your areas.
It affects everyone from the perspective of people that are already in power.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, mate.
We'll talk again soon. Cheers.
Nice one, Pip.
You've been listening to Scroobius Pip's Distraction Pieces.
That was the first ever Distraction Pieces podcast, episode number 1 with Mr. Russell Brand. I hope you enjoyed. It was a fascinating chat. I was really pleased to get to sit down and have a chat with him. If you have enjoyed it, please subscribe and share, and you have to score or something on iTunes, like give us a good review. All of that is important, because I hope you'll agree that was just a conversation that isn't had very often. We discussed a lot of different things. We didn't particularly agree on everything, but hopefully some views and opinions were discussed, and that kind of thing needs to get out more. So please tweet this, share it. I'm at Scroobius Pip. If you want to give me a shout or hit me up about anything, feel free to. Next week's podcast, we've got the legend, Mr. Zane Lowe. And he's one of the people I was most excited to have a chat with. He never seems to be on the other side of the microphone or on the other side of the interview as such. He sat down and talked to pretty much every really relevant artist in the last 10 years of music. He sat down with Jay-Z, with Kanye West, with Chris Martin, with the Beastie Boys, with Rick Rubin, with so many, an endless list of people. So, it's going to be a really interesting one. He's got a lot to talk about, a lot of interesting stories, and his story is interesting as well, because a lot of people don't know how he came up, how they don't know what his musical start was, what his presenting start was. So tune in next week for that one. Subscribe on iTunes, or just knock about at scroobiuspip.co.uk on every Wednesday. Thank you very much for tuning in to the first ever Distraction Pieces podcast, and thank you to Mr. Russell Brand for joining us. See you next week.